So when you finish with your mountings, you should have something like this, right? Models are secured up against the plaster mounting. And any wax that we had to seal the models to the bite that we used previously, we boiled it off. And what will happen often, that some of these models might come off the mounting. So if you notice the upper one here, even though it looks like it's sitting in place, it's actually snapped off, which is okay. It'll happen. And this is one of the reasons why we create keyways. These keyways will enable us to reorient the model back onto the mounting in its correct position. So what I'm going to do, just to further refine this, I'm going to place this back on here, but notice here we have a little bit of a flash. So just gently scrape that off with your finger to make sure you don't trap any stone in between the bottom of the model and the mounting. So I'll place it back together. So now a nice visual that everything is coming back together. We can further carve this a little bit finer by using either maybe your plaster knife or this type of knife here, your 6A or your 7A knife. But hold it firmly, and once again, make sure there's nothing in between. So you want to hold it together firmly and then carve. You can try your plaster knife. Just going to carve away some of the extra overlap here. There's not much to carve, but back here there is a little bit. I want to expose the bottom of the model this way. And this knife works very well because it gives me a nice junction now between the plaster mounting itself and the model. That looks pretty good. I'll leave that on the side and continue with the lower. Just kind of take a look where possibly you have a little bit of excessive of plaster there. You can carve it back, scrape it back, especially around the keyways. You really want to expose the keyways as much as you can. There we go. The back of the model there. And then finally, what you can do and what you should do in order to make these or to finalize these, obviously you would do it over a sink basin under running water, but I don't have that luxury, so I got some water here. So I'm going to take a little bit of fine grit sandpaper. This is wettable sandpaper, so it doesn't break apart when you use it. And just kind of wet everything and go over it with a sandpaper. I'm just going to fold it. It's just a little easier to use. So now this becomes very smooth. And it creates a nice visual where the model meets the mounting. So I'm going to do that all around. Once again, you would do this over a sink, right? Over a tap, under running water. I'll continue all the way around, and it's very important now where you have your keyways, especially on the lower, that we have the external keyways, is that we have a nice smooth finish. So I'm sanding a little bit the sides of the model, but not a lot. You can't do this unless your plaster has thoroughly set. Just a final little stuff here. Rinse that off. I'll blow off the excess. I'm going to set that on the side and I'll finish off with the upper and then we'll assess them together. So it's very important, especially for this one, because it's already separated, right? I have to make sure I squeeze it together firmly. So I don't want to get any debris now between the mounting and the model itself. Okay. So that looks okay. I'm going to set this on the side. It's going to blow off the excess water. So now let's take a look at those mountings and talk about the importance of Keyways. So here's the upper once again. Looks pretty good, but remember, this is not secured because it's separated already. But when I put it back together, it gives me a very nice visual how it fits back together. You don't want this to happen after you mount. What you want to happen is this. The model's still secured on the mounting itself. But sometimes, because you're using hot water and you boil it off, it does separate. Okay? If it does, we have to secure it back onto the mounting. How do we do that? Glue? No. Glue is pretty permanent. So what we're going to use is some separator. Separator is great for attaching things together temporarily. Whenever you use separator to stick things together, like in this scenario, make sure that the two surfaces are somewhat damp. They're not dry, because if they are dry, the separator will dry too quickly and you won't be able to put them back together. So please pay attention to this part. This is very important. So what I'm going to do next, I'll set my model off to the side. I'm going to get a little bit of separator, apply it, and then from here on, I'm going to squeeze very firmly the model against the mounting, very firmly. And you can see the excess separator seeping out the sides. I'll wipe off the excess. We'll let this dry for a couple of minutes. And now this model is secured to the mounting and we're able to use it. So I'm going to put things back on the articulator. And we should have this result right here. We have something that looks very much parallel between top and bottom. The sides of the model, as well as the sides of the mounting, are very smooth to the touch. And I can easily assess how things come back together. And as you saw here, even though this separated, I was able to attach it back together, but you can't tell because it's perfectly back in the same position because of the keyways and the fact that the separator is holding it together, and I have a nice flush finish between the mounting and the model to enable me to assess that. Okay, so on the next step, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be simulating the bike registration on this case.